How is finding work in Los Angeles as a director different from other places?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've lived quite a few different places around the country. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I lived in Nashville for many years. I lived in Eastern Washington. I lived back in Portland and then to LA. Every single city in the country has their own little interesting, if you do film, it has their own little interesting hub. For the most part, most cities have like some sort of industry that keeps it going. Like in Portland and Seattle, there's, you got Microsoft and Nike and Adidas. There's, a bunch of ad agencies there. So for the most part, a lot of the work that people do is in that realm. You can have a great career just doing Microsoft videos, and there's no shame in that. And that's sort of the industry that it's going to be. And the only difference between that and like a Nashville is replace Microsoft with music videos. It's the same kind of thing. Probably a smaller, more tight-knit film community doing similar kind of stuff, and also great careers can be had by doing that. I've recently been doing a lot of work in Florida and Tampa, and their industry is HGTV, I believe. Yeah, it's based there. So a lot of the people that work there at doing, and then I think Ashley Furniture makes a lot of their commercials there. So almost everyone I've worked with usually has spent some time working in that little realm. So moving from city to city, that's not a hub city, that's the biggest difference. It's really just, okay, what industry is here? And then, now if you're talking indie film, the indie film markets in those towns look identical, which is kind of funny. And there's almost this funny little divide between those who are doing the corporate work, like doing the Microsoft stuff or the ad agency world, and then there's the indie filmmakers over here. And usually those two worlds don't intersect that much in a weird way. Now, I think there's a middle step as well, and that would be the hub cities. Cities like New Orleans and Atlanta and New Mexico. So in those cities, tons and tons of work is happening. If you are below the line, any kind of crew position, makeup artist and whatever, gaffer, grips, ACs, all of that stuff, you can work as much as you want, and you're working on great big stuff. You're probably gonna be able to really do quite well. And that is if you want to work in movies, and even if you do want to be a director, but you're starting out and you're working your way up the ladder, those could be great cities to go to, because it's like I have a friend who just moved to New Orleans a few years ago, and he told me when he first moved there, he couldn't believe how much work was actually happening. They were doing a big movie, and their base camp, where all the catering was, where you met in the morning, was actually shared by two other gigantic productions. 3 of them sharing one huge base camp. Like, that's insane. I can't even imagine that. And he said that, because boy, if you live here, you could work as much as you want, full-time, year-round, full union rates, all of it. Like, you could just clean house and work and work and work and work and work. So that does exist in LA, but it's a lot harder to get because everybody moves to LA to pursue film. So everybody's a filmmaker. If you came from Kansas City and you were really good and you had like corner of the market on whatever's in Kansas City, you are really nothing special when you get to LA. Like there will be, it's not that you're not talented, it's just that everybody does that here. Like everybody's like that. LA, those of you who don't live here, like the biggest difference is that LA is where the decisions happen. So if you are above the line, writers, directors mainly, and actors who want to be on larger things, you got to be here. So getting on those projects in an above the line position is a whole different game than anything else that you have to worry about in other cities. All you got to do in, say, a Portland to get work is you're probably going to bid on it, by against a couple of production houses that you're probably friends with. You're going to hire them anyway once you get the job, so it doesn't matter. But you're probably bidding on it in some sort of way. Then, you know, the budgets are not going to, yeah, they may be all right, but they're not going to be millions, more than likely. And yeah, it's going to be a fun little corporate thing, and it's going to be lower pressure. I mean, high pressure for the client, but overall, the grand scope of life, not that big of a deal. LA, it's 100% different than that. You can work here, and most people do when they get here. If you're trying to get here and work as a filmmaker, yes, there is work to be had. Is it work that you want? That's the question. That's the real trick, because most of the people that move here, well, you got to work somewhere. And it generally will come down to, do I work waiting tables or do I work anywhere I can get into the industry? You know, and that might be an assistant to some writer. You're not writing anything, but you're their assistant getting their coffee. It might be, most of the people I know go into reality somewhere, some way. Is it the dream job? Absolutely not. Do they like it? Probably not for the most part. But there's a lot of that kind of work. Below the line stuff, you might be running a camera, you might be producing, but it is not the dream job at all. So it's a weird, almost like purgatory that exists here because it's this giant machine. And that's the best way to define it. LA is an industry. Most of these other towns are communities. That's a huge gulf of a difference. So when you're here, you can get stuck in this filmmaker purgatory of like constantly working on stuff you don't like reality shows or whatever. And then you're making some money and you're surviving, but you cannot figure out how to cross the threshold from that to, all right, I'm going to hire you because you're a great director to direct on this television show or helm the next Marvel film. Like that's a much weirder barrier to cross. And that doesn't exist. And if you don't live here, you're probably not going to have to deal with that unless you're incredibly lucky, unless you just happen to be the one guy who won that lottery ticket and gets discovered by the president of Disney and brings you over. Otherwise, forget it. It's probably not going to happen. So that's a real trick, a real weird. Most filmmakers you meet in LA are in purgatory. They're in that weird. They're all writing something. They're all developing something. They're all of us, everyone I know, they have the thing they want to do. They have no idea how to get over that bridge, but they all want to do it. I think if you're going to move here, that is an important thing to understand because you've got to work somewhere. You got to make a living. And I think if you understand going in that your life will probably be taken over by that purgatory, you have to continue then to keep working on your own craft when you're not on set doing this other thing over here. That is the key to figuring it out. Is I got to live, I got to make a living somewhere. Putting a barrier around that and going, when I'm not doing that, then I'm going to work on my thing. Every writer I know who's got an agent, their agents always tell them, or managers tell them the same thing. Yeah, I know you're working all day on that TV show, and I know you're tired, but if you want anything, if you want to have a career of your own at all, you have to keep working on your own stuff on the side. They tell them that straight up, and every writer I know does that. They'll work all day on their thing. When they get home, they eat their dinner, they sit in there and they write for a couple hours on their own passion projects. And that is how they break through. That is how they keep going forward. But it's harder, you know, especially when you get married, you start having kids, life starts getting in the way. And to find the energy to do that is the biggest challenge.
That leads me to my next question, because we have a quote from you that we got from our 2019 interview that we did with you. What you do in the dark when no one is looking, that's where your mettle is. That's how you get better. Do you still embrace this idea?
Yeah, no question about it. Yes, it is. when you're young, when you're in your teens and in your 20s, we are all going to school, right? And then when we get out of college, most of us stop. Why is that? Why do we all stop learning and taking classes and honing? Why do we do that? What is there like, did somebody on high like flick a switch and say you've learned all that you need to know? No. But we seem to always do that. And the only way to do that is the self discipline to continue on your own when no one's looking. All right? I'm not on Facebook. What can I learn? What am I lacking in my directing skills? Gee, I really suck at working with actors. I should probably get better at that. How do I do that? Well, maybe read a couple of books or take, that's where the real, yes, you must do that if you want to be the best. You have to do that. I was working on a show recently in this last year, and in the last couple of years, I was in a writing class. And I started the writing class because I just wanted to get better at crafting stories, at just understanding how storytelling works on the most basic level. It was an area that I felt was lacking in my own journey, and so I'm gonna do this. So at night I was taking this class, landed this job, and I'm directing all these episodes. And the executive producer pulls me aside, and he says, "Because there's been a few people that have come up to me and said to me, why is the guy who's directing your show taking a writing class at night?" And he said to me, he goes, and they're telling me this, they're asking me this like it's a negative. And I said to them, are you crazy? It's because he knows that life's a journey, that you have to keep sharpening and honing and pushing all the time. Otherwise you stagnate. He thinks that's why he's got the job, because he knows that. Not because he goes, I know everything. It was such an interesting thing to hear, but that's an insight into how most of us think. Like we get to a point where we think we've mastered it. And if you think that, you probably haven't.
And do you think that goes back to what we talked about, sort of, I guess, a snobbery in this business? Because at what point is anybody finished with learning something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it can. I think a lot of the traditional snobbery that we think of when we think of Hollywood, I think it ultimately stems from insecurity. This idea that maybe I'm not, if they were to be honest in the dark, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. A lot of the people that have treated me poorly were people that were threatened by me. And I'm not saying I'm all that. I'm just saying all of us have experienced that, where there's someone that you run into that treats you badly, and you almost know on this gut level that it's like, I think they're threatened by me. I don't even know why. I'm not trying to hurt them. I'm not trying to beat them, but they are viewing me like I'm trying to beat. So it all stems from this deep, deep insecurity, I think. That's really a shame. And a lot of the people I think who are the worst offenders of that are the people that don't continue to grow. They feel like, this is where you'll hear it too. You'll hear it when someone will complain about the young coming up and taking their jobs. That's where you can really spot it. That is someone who has, it's a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. It's a fixed mindset is someone who believes that talent is something you're born with. A growth mindset is someone that believes that talent is something that can be learned by continual repeated behavior. Now, you may have a knack, a propensity for math or photography, but that doesn't mean you're a genius out of the womb. It has to be cultivated and worked. The people that use those terms like, those kids don't know what they're doing, they don't want to hire an expert. Well, no, it's not that. It's probably not that at all. It's because they're hungry. They're coming up and fighting for it to learn, and they're the ones watching Film Courage interviews to get better. The people that are angry are not. They're not. They're just not. Now they're all going to comment on, on this one and say, what is that kind of? But that's, I think that's where that comes from though. And I think if you are one of those people and you're constantly feeling this threat, it's time to take a serious look at where you are standing and where those feelings are really coming from. Are you feeling threatened because you're worried about your job? And if you're worried about your job, why are you so worried? Is it because you think that they're going to discover you for being a fraud maybe? Or is it because, I don't know, like there's many reasons why that could be. I just think it's time for self-reflection time if you find yourself in that position.
I think we can all think back to when we were threatened of someone. I mean, I can picture being 14 and being incredibly threatened of somebody, and now that I look back on it, it was because, I was afraid they were going to, it was my little part-time job, and then I thought they were going to take my job, and they weren't. They were just there for the summer before they went to college. But, it's if we look back to things when we did it, we can say, okay, well, that was why I couldn't say hi to this, and then when it happens to you in reverse, then you go, okay.
That's a fair point. It is a fair point because, yes, I've struggled with that too. There's certainly directors who come up that I'm like frustrated with, like, ugh. But if I'm being honest, I would say it's because I could even, it's happened. I'll see some 20-year-old do something that I can't do. That bothers me because, whatever, and it's, who knows, they spent all their high school years were learning After Effects and they just got really good at doing VFX and they're coming out of the gate with some amazing short that's like, how in the world did he, and I feel threatened by that and I want to treat them badly because of that. I think it's just, that's not, instead, wouldn't it be better, and I'm talking to myself here, but wouldn't it be better for me to take a look at this person and go, maybe we should team up? Wouldn't it be cool to like take someone who's got that desire and has the skill that I struggle with and to bring them onto my team and we could work together? I mean, this is a collaborative art after all. Isn't that the way it's supposed to work? Like you're taking all these artists who are hungry and do you know how much that would mean to him or her if you did that and how hard they would work? Because chances are they are looking at you as, a veteran or whatever, wanting that approval and just begging for a shot. I think that would be a much healthier way of looking at it. Because think about it, that's what we all want. That's what we all wanted. We all want someone to believe in us and not be threatened by us and give us a shot. So, and it actually makes me wonder if those of us who feel threatened, who feel angry, who if we feel like, well, no one ever helped me, why should I help them?
Yeah,
or maybe I don't have anything to give them because I never did get a shot, so they're going to just surpass me. Those are all hard questions to process. I think if you recognize that that's how you're feeling, it's time for a reality check on, maybe you have gotten shots and maybe you are further than you think. Maybe you are someone of influence that does have a lot to give, and holding on so tightly to your position is I think it's like a cancer because when you do that, this gets back to what we were talking about originally, holding on to something when life is trying to slip past and morph it in your hands. Maybe it could grow into something even more incredible than you're imagining right now. Like whenever you start to feel that gut go yip and hold on to that thing, like I think that's a high time to like take a serious look at where you are.